Hey everybody, it's Ian King, founder of King Sports International, author of many books on the subject of training. I've been training athletes at the elite level professionally for over 30 years. And one of the simple concepts I operate by is that there's four key areas in physical preparation. There's, not in any order of importance, speed, strength, flexibility and endurance. So it's always an excellent opportunity when we're discussing each of these areas to really go in with a little bit more depth. And that's what one of the things we'll be doing on this seminar tour shortly, is spending a solid day talking about speed and speed for all sports. And there's some real key things that will come out of the day, and I want to take a moment to share some of them with you here. Before I do, I just want to talk a little bit more. You know, after strength training in this industry, everything's done pretty poorly. All the other three physical qualities are done really poorly, and speed is definitely one of them. In fact, it appears that every personal trainer on every corner of every city in the world could write a strength program, at least in their mind, but not every one of them will say I can write a speed program. The lack of progress that I'm seeing in speed training is quite substantial, and what I'm seeing done is really quite a concern, to put it politely. So it hasn't gone a long way, and I say this from a point of long-term observation. For example, in the 1980s, when I entered the profession, there was virtually no speed training done in my country of Australia with sport, and if it was for typically 100-metre based track and field training, and I even know other countries could relate to that. I even went through into the 1990s. In the early 1990s, I was in a city in America at the first Speed Agility Quickness seminar hosted by Nike. Nike flew me across there. And it gave me good insight to take the pulse of where the country was at that period of time. And we fast forward through, say, to the 1999, and one of the national sporting teams in our country went across to a World Cup event on the philosophy that speed training was developed in the gym, and you actually didn't do anything specific. And that was quite common in Australia. In the last 10 years, post-2000, there's been more of an attempt to do it, but as an equal to strength training, it is not in the eyes of the majority, and even if it was in their eyes, it's certainly not in the practical application. So we are in a point of time in the world where most athletes are being denied the opportunity to fulfill their speed. Quite simply, they're being denied that opportunity. So I look forward to working with all those who attend on this day, and as I take a great delight in helping athletes in their speed in any sport. So let's get into it. Types of speed. Now, I don't intend here and now to go through the subqualities of speed, but one of the first things we need to do as an athlete and a coach is identify which of the subqualities of speed being used in the sport and what is the priority of those. Which one's the most important, which ones are used in what order. And this is something that is still lacking. I'm still seeing too much of non-specific speed qualities being developed because of this lack of understanding of the type of speed. And the type of speed goes even deeper than just, is it acceleration or is it maximal velocity, etc. It goes deeper into the stimulus, what type of stimulus they're responding to, etc. And if this area is misinterpreted from the get-go, then it's pretty much all over from there as far as any real training effects. So let's talk about technique. Now, I may seem a little bit harsh, but if I go to speed training in all sports anywhere in the world, they see the same thing being taught to them all. It's pretty ordinary for the sport, any sport. It's definitely not applicable to all sports. So I don't see a lot of technical models being adapted for the specific sport in question. And let's go through this. For example, there are some sports where you just don't get to use your hands. For whatever reason, you're either holding an implement or your hands are out of action. There are some sports that have vertical displacement, some that have a horizontal displacement more so, some have a lateral displacement, etc. So the technique of movement for these different lines of movement is substantially different. So unless a technical model is developed for each position within each sport, and ideally then for each person, for each individual athlete, if you can't tell me what the technical model is that you're trained towards, then you are underperforming and you're not fulfilling your potential for speed. I raised in there before the subject of lines of speed. Well, it's important to understand basically where you run in your sport or how you locomote, not necessarily run, but what the directions that you locomote, and that your training reflects that when specificity is relevant, and that's a subject in itself. So if you're in, say, a horizontally dominant sport and you're training laterally or vice versa, then I'd like to hear the rationale for it. As I said, I'm not into specificity all the time. but I trust we've got a plan, that you've got a plan for what you're doing. So lines of speed is an important consideration. Let's talk about volume. Now, I say this without any doubt in my mind, that when I watch speed training conducted in the Western world, I think of endurance training. I don't see a lot of speed training being done. I see it being called speed training, but it is in essence endurance training. You know, there's been enough definitions of optimal speed volumes put out there in the market over the years, but that point's been missed. It is continually being used as a conditioning, and you can provide all the reasons you want, but at the end of the day, if you're not developing the specific speed quality, then you're missing an opportunity. It's an opportunity lost to perform. So let's talk about intensity. Intensity and volume are hand in hand. So if the volume's too high, which I suggest it is most of the time, the intensity is too low. You know, the sport is played at an incredible pace, and training is rarely conducted at that pace. So the technical adaptations when you change the speed or the intensity is significant. In other words, if you're not moving at the same intensity, then you're not using the same technical model as you would in your specific sport. So it's really important to train at the specific velocities, because the deviations in, say, ground contact time or other variables resulting from different speeds significantly change the technical model. And so there's a little bit of thought that needs to go in here, as you can imagine. Now, I'm not saying all this to scare you off your speed training. I'm just bringing this to your attention to let you know that there's a whole world of speed training that you as an athlete or a coach probably haven't been exposed to, and here's an opportunity for you to learn. The development that we've made in speed training is phenomenal. We don't talk about it a lot in terms of marketing per se. I'm talking about it here, and I'm going to teach it on the day, but we fly under the radar. If there was as much demand there is for this information as there was for my strength information, then you'd probably see others teaching this as well, or at least attempting to teach it. So let's talk about services. There are a number of different services obviously used in sport, and there's the decision that's got to be made is what service do we use on any given day when we're training for that sport. Now there's just so many considerations that need to go into that, but I tell you what, if I see another say a grass athlete spending 3 months running on sand, and I've seen that particularly in one province or state here in our country, in one particular sport where they're just famous for it. You know, someone wrote about it when Noah came off the ark, and they're still doing it. You know, there is some serious consideration that needs to go into specificity of the surface that you are locomoting on. Which brings us to the topic of specificity in itself. And if you're familiar with my specificity continuum, which at this stage I believe is relatively unplagiarised, because it's obviously not of great demand to the trend spotters, you'd get to know where I place speed in terms of how specific it needs to be, and you know, it does need to be up there. So knowing the level of specificity that you need to apply in your speed training to optimise the speed training is a critical key. So I've gone through some of the things that I believe are critical. There's going to be a lot more that we'll cover on the day, but the bottom line is the only way you're going to learn this stuff is if you turn up. Much of this stuff would be difficult to teach in any other way other than a practical setting, and the best way for you to get a result, either as a coach or an athlete, is to come along and understand from the kinesthetic perspective, by playing in the game, so to speak. So I look forward to working with you if that's what you do.